When today's guest needed care for her grandmother, none of the choices in the community would do for her, so she started her own agency, and she could teach you how to do the same.
Welcome to the Home Care Heroes podcast, featuring trending topics and practical wisdom for success in home care. Here's your host, Ken Accardi.
Well, hello and welcome to Home Care Heroes. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Latoya Thompson, and she hails from the greater St. Louis, Missouri area. And Latoya is a multi-preneur. She actually studied great combination. She studied social work and she also studied fashion, and she actually has a home care agency, but also helps other people get their home care businesses started. And she also does, she was a personal stylist at Nordstrom, so she's like, has all these great things in her background. And I think what you'll find is that she has a really great spirit and a great outlook and a lot of good advice for those of you in Latoya. Welcome to Home Care Heroes. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, so let's just jump right in and tell us your story. I mean, you obviously have a lot of passions and things that you do, but tell us how you got into home care, and you told me some interesting things about caring with your grandma and all that. So take us through that journey.
Sure. So let's see. I come from a family that works in the healthcare field. My mother is a CNA. My aunt is a CNA. My grandmother was a LPN. And then my sister is a CNA. My cousins, they're all caregivers. So I come from a background of, caregivers. It was back, I want to say in 2010 or 2009. My grandmother was sent home from the hospital, basically saying they couldn't do anything for her and they wanted to put her on hospice. And I could not digest that because I'm like, well, she just went in because she had congestive heart failure. And I'm like, she just went in to get, the fluid off of her. And then you guys sent her home saying that there's nothing else that they can do for her. So we went through that process of trying to hire caregivers, going through second opinions of doctors. And we didn't do the hospice, so we hired people. During that process of trying to hire caregivers and home care agencies, we went both routes, looking through the papers, looking for independent private pay people, which that was interesting because I needed 24-hour live-in service for her at the time because she was that sickly.
Right.
And it didn't make sense to pay 2 12-hour shifts at the rates that agencies and individuals were trying to charge us. But I ended up finding an agency to do the live-in services for her. That was good. It was a good run. But then of course the caregivers kind of lacked, and the people that they were sending, the quality kind of declined. She ended up getting better. And then a couple of years went by again. Then she got sick again. So then it was back in 2016 when she got sick again when I said I'm just going to start my own agency. So it was the end of 2016, beginning of 2017 when I started my own home care agency. And I realized that it is hard. It is hard to find good caregivers. It is hard to find clients and really understanding the needs. But it was easy to navigate because I was able to speak with the experience and speak with the families about the journey and understand the growing pains of having a loved one who needs to have outside care.
Yeah, perfect. So you had that personal experience, you have the passion for it, heart for caregiving, and that got you into it. So that's really fantastic. And then you said, hey, let's make a business out of this. So
Yeah.
one thing I find with it's kind of interesting. We generally say, okay, this person that we're bringing on board, are they more of a Medicaid client or are they more of a private pay client? And you're kind of interesting that you actually started in private pay and then you added the Medicaid and you work on both sides. And one thing that we sometimes advise our Medicaid agencies is, go state by state, but let's take Missouri for example, where you are, when you're doing consumer directed services at, $16.04 an hour, to the agency, it's not like it's like the highest margin. And we sometimes advise folks to say, hey, if you could bring in some private pay, then that can, help you with your revenue side. So yeah, what advice would you have in that area, kind of the balance of having some Medicaid and some private pay?
For Missouri, it's interesting on the Medicaid side, particularly with the CDS, because it's like multiple businesses in one, and a lot of people really don't understand the CDS concept is very much different from any other state on the Medicaid side, because basically as the agency, we're just a vendor, so we're just a facilitator to make sure that these consumers or clients are in compliance of the state of Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And the program is a complicated program. Even a lot of the consumers really don't understand, like, why do we have our own tax ID? And it's like, because you pick your own worker, they're not a caregiver of the agency, or just a vendor of the agency. And on the private pay, because we're a non-regulated state, it's very easy to enter. No real skill requirement or even license to enter. And I think people who starting, they should do both.
Right.
Because it's non-regulated, you can charge whatever you want to charge. You want to compare, be at market rate, but also compare with your competitors. What are they charging? So that's one source of income for an agency, or if a person is doing private pay on the private side, and you're able to bill however you decide. Versus Medicaid sets the rates. Medicaid has their own policies and procedures that you have to go off of. Medicaid only usually do a raise or decrease annually, and that's in July. And we really don't have a say so. We just have to, whatever they say, this is how much we're charging. And they're charging per unit, which is different from like charging per hour on the private pay. So if you can have a balance of both, that would be great. But it's some people that do really well on the private pay and can't find or have the interest of entering the Medicaid side.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, one aspect of things that we see. Well, let me take a step back. I saw two of your videos on YouTube that are both pretty popular and trending videos. One is about how to get private pay clients, and the other one is about how does the Consumer Directed Services program in Missouri work. And I guess I should take a step back. So we did talk about the CDS program, and this is a program in New York, it's called CDPAP, and in Florida, it's just called, or Virginia, it's just called Consumer Directed. But there's a lot of different names for this kind of program around the country, where the way that the home care works is that essentially the person receiving the care might have a family member or somebody that they're bringing as a caregiver, and then the home care agency is administering the program. So that is a different kind of program. It's very different than private pay. But
Yes.
It's really great that you have, like two of your scoring videos are on both sides of the aisle, right? The private pay side and the Consumer Directed Services side. So that's really, really interesting that you've been successful in both areas. Let's jump into private pay for a minute here. I mean, for people who are just starting out, like, since you have this video about finding clients, like, what are some of your suggestions there? Where should they look in the community, and how do they get their name out there for private pay?
Yeah, I think building relationships or partnerships with like dialysis centers, as well as occupational therapy or any rehab facilities or any pain specialists, building those relationships. Also, like chiropractors or any short-term skilled facilities, any independent living facilities, putting ads out, but going out or sending emails or even doing cold calls and just introducing yourself, basically seeing how can you be a benefit to them, and then they can tell you their growing pains, and then you find that solution.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a really big relationship business. And then if you could go out and you could build the relationships with these folks that have, let's say, the dialysis or the occupational therapy, so they might have, they're providing a different service, but they might have the clients that might also need
Well,
your
they're
service as
referral
well.
source. They're
Yeah,
referral
exactly.
source because the patients are only there temporarily, and then afterwards they have to be discharged and still need continuum care. but they don't
Right.
provide that personal care side. So that's the opportunity for someone new that's trying to grab that business and say, hey, we provide, post-op, personal care, or there are these variations of services, and this is how we can help you.
Yeah, got it. All right, so let's shift to what is always the central topic here on Home Care Heroes, which is sort of the battle for caregivers, right? So what everybody tells us, whether they're, anywhere they are in the home care industry, is that it's all about recruiting and retention and the challenges that come with that. I know that one thing we talked about before we started recording here is that there's a lot of cost that goes into bringing on a caregiver, and if they don't stay with you, then that's a sunk cost and that kind of thing. So tell us, maybe some of the, elaborate on what I said with the struggles here, but then also, like if you have some good ideas to share in that area, I'm sure our listeners would love to learn that from you.
Yeah, well, the struggle is real. It's on a continual basis. I know recently with COVID, people, with COVID, the unemployment increased, right? So what we were doing was reaching out to caregivers that we already had on staff and saying, hey, do you have a friend or do you know someone that may be interested that's in the same field that will want to come aboard for our agency? Because just putting ads out and doing you try to weed people out. So what we do, you'll put a post up, someone will apply, we'll do the phone screening, see if they pass the phone screening. If they pass the phone screening, then we'll meet them in person. If they, meet them in person, and then if we think that they're a good fit, then we'll give them the offer the training. And last year it was a lot of virtual training, which became very interesting as well versus that in-person training and in-person orientation. But I think trying to use the network that you already have, if you have a good network of caregivers, using them as a referral source. And then also building relationships. And it worked a little bit, but with the nursing schools around here, or if they have, I'm pretty sure it's some CNA schools or some type of nursing training programs, building a relationship with those career services individuals to send you potential graduates or people who need to get so many service hours.
Yeah, that's great. Interestingly, one of our last guests was a well-known consultant in the industry by the name of Stephen Tweed.
Okay.
And he talked about, there's really three sources of recruiting. One is referral from your existing caregivers, and that's those folks stay the longest and they have a friend in the company and they're going to be a fit. The second, of course, is your online, whether you're doing your Indeed or your My CNA jobs. It turns out that actually the folks that come in that way end up staying the shortest, by statistical things. And then the third part is your in-person recruiting. And one of the things that Stephen said in particular is that nursing students or people who are in a school, being medically trained really make fantastic caregivers, and it helps them get the experience they want and they work out really well. He also talked about, the faith-based community. So if you could find people who are, kind of in some type of, faith-based work, and they're as part of their, their work there. I mean, they have the relationship skills and things like that. So those are a couple places to go. So there you go. You're totally aligned with Mr. Stephen. Good stuff. All right. So listen, just to kind of bring it into the home stretch a little bit. I know that in addition to being this multi-preneur and doing all these fantastic things that you do and that type of thing and running your own agency, you also provide services to help others to get their businesses going and their agencies going. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, if somebody says, wow, I definitely feel connected to Miss Latoya from this Home Care Heroes episode, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, they can go directly to the website, which is latoyaelnora.com, which is my first and middle name. And it's a lot of free resources on there, like contract agreement with facilities. A lot of agencies, or some agencies here, have started sending staff to some of the larger facilities because they were so short-staffed. So it's a lot of resources and digital download work just free on the website. And then if they want to continue the conversation about how can they start their own business, or how can they capture or get the CVS contract here in Missouri, or the in-home contract here in Missouri, they can just book a consultation online.
That sounds fantastic. So I am good at spelling Latoya. I'm not 100% sure I have your middle name spelled. So walk me through it. It's just Latoya Ilnora. Could you spell that for us? Just spell it
Sure.
out.
So it's Latoya, Latoya, and then Elnora, ELNORA.com.
Perfect. LatoyaElnora.com.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Well, with that, we will shut it down for today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on Home Care Heroes, and we look forward to having you be posted online and on the podcast beat very soon. And thank you again for being here on Home Care Heroes.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on the Home Care Heroes podcast. Home Care Heroes is produced by Ancoda, the software for the heroes of home care. You can listen to back episodes by visiting forhomecareheroes.com. That's the number 4, then the words homecareheroes.com.